What's going on, everybody? It is your favorite apostates. I, of course, am McKay.
And I am Jordan.
And, what's that? How many subscribers did we hit this week, Joe?
5K.
5K. That's right. Everybody, there's 5,000 people who are like, yep, I want this shit to arrive in my subscription box every intermittently, apparently, depending on the week. But usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday when we can. So that's amazing. I don't even know what to make of that. We're putting together a giveaway for our 5K milestone. So this Friday's video is going to include a little bit about that, but we'll get back to that later at the end of the video. But I talked about, it's still over there. I talked about a box last video. Hold on. Okay. Well, this is interesting. We got a box. Let's open it up and see what's inside. We already know, but... Oh, would you look at that? The Exmo Candle Company. Well, that's awesome. We got two candles here in this nice little box. And a little envelope that says signs and tokens. It's got a little wax seal with a tapir. Tapir?
I like tapir better. I don't know
I like
if that's
tapir.
right or not.
It sounds cool. Let's open up this little... The signs and tokens, of course, is reference to the signs and tokens of the Holy Temple. If you're a layman wondering what that is, it's just like some funky handshakes and hand signs that get you into super VIP heaven. People are going to be mad at me for calling it that, but this looks like it's their story. Go ahead and read that, Joe.
Okay. So, this is from the Exmo Candle Company, and we will link all of their stuff down in the description. So, a few things in here. First is Jen's story. Jen is the creator, the founder, the amazing human behind Exmo Candle Company.
She's also one of our 5,000 subscribers, so shout out Jen. She's awesome.
When I stopped going to church in 2008, I didn't talk about it. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was weak and worthless and an enemy to God. When I finally discovered other ex-Mormons a full decade later, the relief was overwhelming. Adri, I don't know if I'm saying that right, which is her husband, and I started making Exmo candles as a way to celebrate that feeling and to share it. Thank you so much for supporting our business, but even more, thank you for joining us in lighting outer darkness together.
That's awesome.
That's their slogan. Okay, so there's a few things in here. Candle care. There's a cute little...
They give you a little information.
There's a cute little picture of the two of them. I don't know.
Candles? You can't just light candles.
They're super cute.
With their socials and everything on it. That's awesome.
And then my favorite right here. A little tidbit. And because we love you, here is Brigham Young's Enema recipe.
Bruh, is this factual?
Yes. In his
No
1860
way.
journal, Brother Brigham noted the efficacy of this enema concoction in strengthening his bowels. The recipe is consecrated oil, cayenne pepper, ground ginger, cloves, and barberry. Future candle recipe.
That's a spicy booty hole. Cayenne pepper?
If you weren't aware, Brigham Young basically died because he was giving himself enemas all the time and he got an infection, and that's how he died.
Yeah.
So... yeah.
So
Fun fact about Brigham Young.
that's fun. Yeah, he's putting consecrated oil, which the Mormons use to anoint the sick and afflicted to perform faith healings.
Shoving it up his butt.
Putting it in an enema in his booty hole. So we got two different scents. This one, titled Lazy Learner. I like how they have the little stamped kind of cute font. Lazy Learner. This one's based off of, and man, just in time. They must have had this one brewing as soon as the words left Mr. Rusty's lips. This one is based off of one of the recent General Conference talks that Russell M. Nelson, the prophet of the church, He gave talking about how lazy learners and lax disciples will fail to muster even a little bit of faith, which is true because, you know, facts and logic is way better than faith, in my opinion.
So the thing that I love about Exmo Candle Company, this is not an ad. This is not sponsored, by the way.
Yeah.
We bought these with our own money.
And we were like, this is awesome. People need to get the word out about this.
So there's so much like detail that goes into these candles. Like every single thing to do with these candles, the labels, the scents, like the concoctions to make the candles, like everything is done by hand by Jen and her husband. And so I think that's just freaking phenomenal. Plus, there's lots of cute little details, like there's a little tapir on the top, and then on the bottom, it says, warning, people who do not follow these standards, which is burn within sight, keep away from things that catch fire, blah, blah, blah. People who do not follow these standards are unclean things and are not entitled to the blessings of candles.
Ooh, take that candle away. So that's our lazy learner. That one's
so good.
That one's good. That's not a scent we would usually buy.
No, it's not.
This is, but I like it.
Sea spray and fresh coconut.
It also comes with a little box of branded box of matches, so that's cool.
Plus, it tells you who, it says on here, scented candle, hand poured with heathen hands on, and it gives you the date it was poured and who poured it. So it's obviously Jen or her husband. But
yeah.
Isn't that freaking awesome?
That's amazing.
Like, that's so much detail in one little candle.
Yeah, we're fans of candles. We like Capri Blue. We're basic bitches, honestly. We'll call it. Yeah, Volcano Capri Blue candles. But the reason we wanted to do this video was it tied into the topic that we wanted to talk about today. This is the second candle we bought. It is called Licked Cupcake. I really hope you guys can read this. I can't tell by the viewfinder, so we'll see in post. I might have to make up for it. So this scent is Licked Cupcake. Vanilla cake, buttercream, and lemon peel. Smells amazing. Okay.
It smells to die for. Yeah, it smells like freaking... Okay. I might light that one in just a couple minutes here. Before we get into what the significance of the Licked Cupcake is, I forgot to add that for every candle purchased, they plant one tree and they make a donation to a... what was it? So every month they have like a spotlight candle. And so for the month, I'll have McKay put a picture up of this month's. Like for Pride, they were donating, I think, to the Trevor Project. And so 10% of every candle sold of that spotlight candle for that month goes to that community organization, which is really awesome.
So that's awesome.
So yeah, for Pride Month. So go buy their Pride Month candle. It's really cute. So
yeah. I'll throw a picture up on there. But back to the Licked Cupcake. Like I was saying, it's kind of like an infamous Mormon cultural icon, because it's done so much damage to so many people. It's not even funny. And this is just one flavor of like a variety of object lessons that are just like, honestly, you look them up and all you can see for like the first 2 pages of Google results is just like blog posts on how damaging these things are.
If you follow us on Instagram, and you have for like the last little while, you know a little bit about the Licked Cupcake analogy because I did a few stories about it. But this one, in my experience talking to people about this and from the hundreds of people who've reached out to me on Instagram, the Licked Cupcake analogy is probably the most common, like, purity culture-based analogy within the church. So the whole premise of the Licked Cupcake is that if you have sex before marriage, or if you have participated in any sexual activity outside of marriage, then you're like a cupcake because you're like a girl and you're cute, right? But like you're a licked cupcake, and so is any man gonna want the licked cupcake? No, they're gonna want
a fresh cupcake,
cute fresh cupcake. And so I was familiar with this because I was taught things along these lines in Young Women's. Mind you, these analogies are extremely common in the Young Women's program, which is 12 and up. 12 to 18. And so young women, young impressionable women who are probably already struggling with their self-confidence and self-esteem and self-worth are hearing things like this. And usually one of the most problematics of the licked cupcake and other analogies like this in purity culture to me is we typically, in these lessons, leaders don't typically account for girls who have been abused, who have been sexually abused, because that message, like, so there's no distinction. Like so even if the premarital sexual activity that you engaged in wasn't consensual and wasn't your choice, that analogy still applies to you because they're not going to explicitly say that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so,
that caveat usually doesn't exist because it's Happyville, Mormon town. It gets overlooked so often, and it is so common. It's disappointingly common.
And so I posted about this on Instagram, not expecting too much of a response. I figured I would get some responses from ex-Mormons who were like, oh yeah, I got, this garbage one, or I got that one. But I got hundreds of DMs. I was flooded, and it was not just Mormons. It was Catholics. It was Baptists. It was evangelicals. It was all kinds of fundy religions. It was Mennonites. It was like, I'm telling you, like, it ran the religious spectrum. And so what I did was I got a lot of repeat messages, obviously, because there's some popular ones that kind of tend to just get recycled, like the licked cupcake one. But what I did was I just compiled all the ones that I thought were like really heinous, or the ones that I just had never heard before, and saved them all to a highlight on my Instagram. So I wanted to share some of those with you today. So if you would like to gasp in horror with us, please do.
Amazing. So while she's pulling that up, I just wanted to touch on, people might be like, well, the church doesn't have this in any of their manuals, which it doesn't. Especially the Mormon church, I know for a fact none of their manuals do. But part of the Mormon church experience, and I'm speaking explicitly of the Mormon church, I'm not aware of any other churches that or how they teach or anything like that. But these classes are taught by voluntold people of the congregation. They're not paid. This is a volunteer position that they do for free on their free time. They're given a lesson manual, but they're given free reign to do whatever because
they get some bullet points essentially.
Yeah, they get bullet points
really
or whatever,
vague, and they can run with it.
Yeah.
Like depending upon who's teaching the lesson, it's just like Bishop Roulette. Depending upon who's teaching the lesson is going to like vastly impact the message that you get about the law of chastity.
Yeah, so it could be that you have somebody who's very understanding, maybe has had experience with sexual sins or sexual abuse or anything like that. Or you could end up with some shithead who maintained their purity all up until their marriage, and they're just so great, and they've never struggled with lustful thoughts or anything of the sort. And that person could do a lot of damage because they might think, this is a great analogy because it didn't apply to me. So they can tell all these girls in their classroom about the licked cupcake, totally blissfully unaware of the potential damage that it can be and will be doing to many of them.
And I want to emphasize that one of the biggest problems with these analogies is the, like, not even, like, I don't even know how to word it. Like, not even, like, they don't even try to conceal the fact that it's blatant objectification of girls. Like, we are literally comparing girls to cupcakes. We're comparing them to
Objects.
tape. We're comparing them to fences. We're comparing them to cars. Like, we're literally objectifying women. And this, mind you, in the Young Women's program, it is women teaching women. So men aren't teaching these messages. They probably wrote the lesson plans, likely. But it's women who are teaching this to girls. And mind you, the men get a law of chastity lesson, but it's nothing like this.
It's only porn.
Yeah. And so they don't get any dumb analogy
Yeah. Like if you've committed a sexual sin, then how is that going to be to your wife?
Yeah. And they don't get
Kind
any
of.
like, we're going to compare you to an object and we're going to tell you that, oh, you know what? If you have sex, then your wife's not going to, like, your future wife's not going to want you. They don't get any messaging like that. Just the girls do. So again, we're putting it on the young women that, once again, they're responsible for the young men's thoughts and the young men's actions, and it's on them to make sure that they're not having sex because the men can't be controlled, and so we'll just punish the women.
Why is that, Joe?
Patriarchy.
How's that smell?
Really stinky.
It stinks. Unlike these amazing candles that we received today.
Okay, so let's go through some of these. And some of these are from ex-Mormons, some of them are not, so I'm specify some of them don't. I was taught the same thing by my church growing up and my mom. They said it was like being a used and trashed old car, and that a potential husband doesn't want a used and dirty car, he wants a fresh, brand new car.
Bitch, I'm trying to get to work. So if it's got 4 wheels
And
it runs, okay, that's
again,
beside the point.
car. We're comparing objectification of women. Okay, this is one from an ex-Mormon. When I confessed to my bishop that I had sex before marriage, he used the analogy of using spoiled milk to make cinnamon rolls. The milk is no longer good, but you can still use it to make delicious pastries.
What?
So, like, you're used. I mean, you're still good, but you're not as good.
It's okay, but yeah. Okay, yeah. Did this guy think, oh, well, you could still make delicious cinnamon rolls, like if you made it with a spoiled milk that nobody would notice?
The whole premise of this is just ridiculous.
It's bad.
And assigning, like, mind you, this woman went to her bishop and confessed about having sex before marriage. So in reality, this sin should have been washed away, forgiven, because that's what they teach, right?
Yeah.
And so there should be no analogy or anything like that, because it doesn't affect, like, that sin is gone. If she repented and went through the repentance process and confessed to her bishop, then that analogy doesn't apply anymore. And so we're fundamentally misunderstanding doctrine at the same time.
So this is the risk that the Mormon Church runs when they are putting their own congregation members into clergy type positions. This guy obviously didn't know really the bullshit that the Mormon Church teaches. So he totally just taught something false. And that person, thanks to that bishop, never going to be a member again. So why is the Mormon Church hemorrhaging membership? Things like this.
This one is really common. This is probably the one I got the most. We were compared to chewed gum. Like, he wants a chewed piece of gum when you can have a fresh one. That I've heard a lot of ex-Mormons talk about, but I think this one came from, like, just non-denominational Christian type. So that one was really, really...
The chewed gum.
This one is another really popular one. We were taught in public school, so we're not even in, like, a religious context here. We were taught in public school that we were, like, a used piece of tape. Then they took the packing tape and had 2 kids stick them together and then pull them apart over and over and over again.
That sounds like abstinence only...
which is usually based in some type of religious context, a majority.
I wonder what the abortion numbers look like in that state.
But here's the deal. Like, once again, we've got objectification, and then we're also assigning women's worth. We're tying it to their purity or to their virginity. And so when you send this kind of message that, like, it's really confusing to young people, because in church they always talk about, all sins can be forgiven, like, you just work through the repentance process. Like, sexual sin's really bad, but if you confess to your bishop and you work through the process, then you're good again. You can get married in the temple. You can go to the highest level of heaven. Like, you're good. But then we do things like this, where we're having kids, like, rip pieces of tape apart and becoming, like, we're insinuating that they're fragmented or broken versions of themselves. And so that's not healthy.
And especially an object like that, like where there's an action to it, that's going to stick to those kids forever.
Well, and the majority of these women are older than I am. I would say I talked to some women who were like 50s and 60s, and I talked to a bunch of women in their 30s and 40s and late 20s. And so these kinds of messages have stuck. Like, these women still remember these things, like, decades later. Because these kinds of things are so toxic that they basically get burned in your brain. And that's just bad.
Really disappointing.
This one was from, someone said their youth pastor, they were Baptist Christian, glued two pieces of paper together, tore them apart, and compared it to sex before marriage. So once again, like,
that's very extreme.
Even in a non-Mormon context, we're hugely misunderstanding
the
gospel of Jesus Christ and repentance and all of these things and what that looks like, in that we're just, it's no wonder young kids are confused. It's no wonder that young kids are leaving religion in droves, because they're being taught such a variation of things and on completely different ends of the spectrum. And how do you rectify that?
Where in this context, like in one situation, they're like, God forgives all through Jesus. And then in a context, they're like, well, God forgives, but what about your husband in the future?
There's like, consequences.
It just doesn't work. It's contradictory.
Okay. Mine was the unwrapped piece of gum. They passed around a bowl of individually wrapped bubble gum, but one of them was unwrapped, so there was dirt and stuff stuck to it. Obviously, no one took that one, and once it went all the way around the room, the leader asked why no one chose the unwrapped piece, and we all said because it was dirty, and she was like, that's what you will be like if you have sex before marriage. No man will want you. This person I know for a fact was former Mormon. Just not okay. Like, picture, like, this is, talking about this shit is really hard for me, because picture, like, a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl who is just absolutely in the throes of purity culture and in the throes of social media and everybody broadcasting their highlight reel of their lives and looking at other women and what they're supposed to look like. And the majority of that is going to be not authentic. And so they're grappling with all of those things in addition to, you know, their peers and what they're supposed to dress like and act like. And so they're grappling with all these things, and then they get thrown shit like this.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not see that that's damaging? Like, as a person, as a human being, like, how do you not see that? I don't get when people are like, purity culture. I'm like, how do you not get that? Like, it's not a mystery that girls have self-esteem issues, especially young women. And they have it, in my opinion, they have it worse than ever before, because I didn't even have the amount of social media that they have now. And so they're growing up in a completely different context than I did. And in my opinion, it's worse. And so when you throw all of that in, and then we continually perpetuate these disgusting, harmful things, like, we're just creating a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. It just gets magnified with the amount of social media that there is and just the social pressure that exists. And I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch with how truly bad it is, but...
Well, and you're not a woman.
Well, other than that.
So it's
of course different. I'm out of touch when it comes to women.
But the next one I got, this one actually came from TikTok. Someone commented on one of my videos and said, the camp I worked for taught us that it was a Pringles can. You can't put the seal back, but you can use the lid and people can see it's been opened.
That's just fundamentally wrong, but...
So, and now, in addition, like, we've got this, like, big-ass pot of bullshit brewing.
Stir it up, bitches.
But in addition to that, now we have the kind of... what's the us and them dynamic that starts happening, because usually, like, in my young women's group, it was me, but usually there's a rebellious girl in every young women's group and every youth group and any religious class, and, you know, the leaders talk about things like this, and everybody turns their head and looks at you, and so there's this, we continue to foster this holier than thou, I'm better than you because I didn't have sex. Like, I even grew up with someone who was, like, so entitled by the fact that she did everything so perfectly that it, like, I feel like impacted her on such a severe level, because she felt like she was so much better than everybody, because she was never the one that...
Never the lost sheep.
She was never the black sheep. She was never the lost sheep. Jesus never had to come after her. Like, she was always the good one. So why is she getting punished with not being able to be in a relationship or things of that nature? Because, you know, like, she's always been the good one. And so this just kind of breeds that logic, and that, like, okay, well, I'm going to get the return missionary because I didn't have sex before marriage, and Jordan shouldn't have got the return missionary because she did. You know, it just kind of continually breeds that us versus them mentality. One of the ones, this is like funny, but it's not. Someone said, my mother always said once he catches the bus, he'll stop running. And she's like, thanks, Mom, I'm a bus.
This girl bussin'.
like the comparing of women to vehicles and like awful objects. Dumb. I just understand.
It's so dumb.
This one was disgusting. I had never heard this one before. I went to Catholic school. We all lined up with cups of water, took sips, and spit them back into the cups. Then we had to dump it in the next person's cup down the line. They said if you had sex with one person, you were having sex with everyone down the line because all the spit mixed together. And this is also a really common narrative, like even in public school. When I was in public school in Colorado, this is something that they also teach, that every person that you have sex with, you essentially take that part of you with you to the next person.
It's like a Horcrux, like. What?
And it's false. And I mean, I will say, with the caveat of, if you have multiple sexual partners, make sure that you're being safe and getting tested in between, so we're not passing things back and forth.
That would be the only situation where that's happening.
But the idea that, like, you're giving a piece of yourself to this person, and then you are not whole in that sense. Like, that's a super common narrative in Mormonism as well, is that you give away those pieces of yourself, and then you're not whole for your husband. Toxic much? This one was also a really common one. A tube of toothpaste squeezed until empty. Then we were asked if you could put the toothpaste back into it once it had been removed.
You actually can.
So once again, we have the...
It's hard, but...
We have the social construct of virginity. And that once you... And this is strongly upheld by Mormon leaders, Spencer W. Kimball in particular. I was just reading a quote of his that talked about this. Is once your chastity has been given away, you can't get it back. It's gone. And so the whole concept of virginity in Mormonism is strong held.
Oh, yeah.
But we know it's not biological. We know, like, if you watched our other video that we just posted.
Yeah. On Monday.
About Girl Defined and Paul and Morgan. We talked about this there. But so, yeah, this whole idea of virginity is like this. It's the purest gift you can give to your husband, is one of the things that I was taught in Young Women. It's like, it's the best gift that you can give him. And then, like, in the sense that it's a gift, and once you give it away to that somebody, it's gone forever. And that's just not true. And again, that's so damaging, especially for someone like myself who was a victim of child sex abuse. Like, what if you gave I didn't give away my gift voluntarily. Mine was taken from me. And so how do you not, like, tell that to a child, not knowing? Like, this same kind of lesson, these same kinds of concepts were told to Elizabeth Smart. If you're not familiar with Elizabeth Smart, she was an LDS girl that got kidnapped and lived with her.
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah. She lived with her captor for many, many years. And upon her going back, and when she was in Young Women's and things, she was taught things like that. And she was like, oh my God, like, I'm broken, and I'm not whole.
Nationwide news story, and these stupid ass Young Women's teachers were saying things like that. And she's anybody didn't know who she was.
Yeah. Well, and you can find articles on it. She's talked about it. And so that's just another example. Like, they don't discriminate in these lessons to account for things like that. Like, that, I firmly believe they shouldn't be teaching these kinds of things, period. But they definitely don't. Yeah. Like, they aren't sensitive to those types of things either.
Yeah. So if they're gonna do it with a girl who everybody in the goddamn nation knows was kidnapped and abused, think about all of those girls who Never,
they don't know.
Not even to this day, have never told a soul.
Well, and they're not going to, it's not their job to disclose to you. And as a teacher, it's not like, you shouldn't be sensitive to those things because you know you have a young woman in your class who's been impacted by that. You should be sensitive to those things always. You need to assume
because you don't know.
You don't know. And you need to assume that those at least one young woman that you're working with or one young man that you're working with has an experience like that, and just assume it's always true. And then move forward acting on that premise. Like, child sex abuse is insanely common, especially here in Utah. Utah has one of the highest rates of child sex abuse in the United States. And so just like govern yourself based on the assumption that you're working with children who have been sexually abused. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and Jordan talks about high rates in Utah. That's reported incidents.
Yeah.
Just always remember that's only reported incidents.
So we have a fraction. One that I thought one of our followers who I love sent us this one that I had never heard of either. So this is called a sugar jar.
Oh, sugars.
When you become a teenager, your mother gives you a sugar jar that represents your purity. And anytime you kiss or engage in any sexual activity, you remove a spoonful of sugar, and it represents how sweet your purity is. And it's usually given to you by your mother or grandmother or motherly figure. And so this is just, I mean, this is awful. This is one that I
People never
not
drink
heard of.
like sugar water. It's disgusting.
I just can't imagine like you having this, like a child having the sugar jar in their room, and her mom finds out that she like kissed her boyfriend, and she's like, oh, I'm going to go scoop sugar out of the sugar jar. Like, how toxic is that? Like, you are directly sending the message to these youth that you are unworthy.
Your children.
Yeah, you're fragmented. You're broken. There's pieces of yourself that's now missing. You're not as sweet anymore. Like, this is why, and people are like, oh my God, you just get on here to clown on Christians and Paul and Morgan and all these people. And I'm like, this is why.
This is a huge part of it.
Because these people, especially these people who have huge platforms like Girl Defined, these people continue to perpetuate these things, and it's harmful. And I'm not going to sit down and shut up about it because it impacted me.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to stop until these people realize what they're doing. And so if that means clowning on them in reaction videos for the rest of who knows how long, then that's what I'll do. Fine. Until they get the picture. And they might never, but I'm not going to sit here and let that video exist on YouTube in the context of all its horridness without having ours up there as well saying, no, if you're a young woman and you're listening to this isn't true. This is false. This is garbage. Don't listen to this. There's nothing wrong with you. Even if you've had sex before marriage, you're still whole. You didn't give away any pieces of yourself. Like, that's why we do this. Because I didn't have that. Like, I just got to deal with it in therapy. Yep. So if there was other people out there who were sending that message, then that would have been beneficial to me. So, end of rant. That's why we're here.
Yeah. People always ask us, they're like, why do you feel the need to do this? Why can't you just leave it alone? This is one of the reasons why. Because the church and the church doctrine actively causes harm to people like Jordan and many other people that are out there. Because of their teachings, people commit suicide, people
harm themselves.
Mutilate their genitals or consider mutilating their genitals because they feel they are impure. And this is not just some bullshit thing. Jordan has friends who are therapists here in Utah that work with people in the religious community, the Mormon community, because it's Utah, who have considered that. We have friends who have considered things like that. So
when you like, eventually, we can only do so much, right? But eventually you have to start looking, like, all the people I love the falling in the river analogy. All the people are falling in the river. Like, Mormonism is causing all of these people to fall in the river. Yeah. So instead of continuing to just help people out and help people out and help people out, we need to figure out what the f*** is happening and why are so many people falling in the damn river? Like, that's what, and I think that came from, I think I heard that from Mark Osland on his podcast that he did on Mormon Stories. But I love that analogy because it perfectly describes, like, instead of just continuing to pull people out, we need to figure out why people are falling in. And Mormonism and the institution that Mormonism is why people are falling in. And they're absolutely they're just complacent. They don't care. They know these things, and anybody who brings up things like not interviewing young kids inappropriately, like the person who brought that up and said that's inappropriate, Sam Young, he got booted too. He got excommunicated.
Yep.
And so anytime people bring up changes and usually criticisms, usually the church makes that change like a few months or a year or two down the line and never credits the person who brought it up because
and never exonerates their excommunication or anything like that. Which
no. Like the church excommunicated people based on speaking about Heavenly Mother years and years and years ago, and now Heavenly Mother is a huge part of Mormon doctrine. Did they reinstate those women? No. So that's just an example. Like that's why we're here. That's why we do this. That's why we won't shut up. That's why the hate comments. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Go ahead. Tell me that all of this is biblical and don't cite scripture. I asked somebody to cite me scripture on that. Still waiting on a response.
Shocking.
So
this was another public high school one. I went to a public high school that always used one older Catholic man to teach sex ed.
Oh, gross.
I remember when I took sex ed, he gave all the girls in the class a rose and told us we were each as beautiful as the rose we held in our hands. He told us to scrunch the petals of the rose in front of him and then said, "This is what you'll be if you have sex before marriage, shriveled and gross. And you'll be unable to get that beauty back." To my knowledge, he's still teaching sex ed at that school today, 10 years later. He's got to be 70 years or older now, still trying to shame teenage girls, I can imagine. And so the words shriveled and gross. So once again, let's just assign throwing out more shame sprinkles.
Sounds like this guy is projecting into his teaching.
Well, again, we go back to that virginity construct that once it's gone, it's gone. Once it's like shriveled up, it's ugly and you can't do anything with it anymore. And like, that's just all false. That's not true. And that's so harmful to teach young people. And I don't even care. I mean, it's harmful to teach young men, but we don't teach them about that shit because patriarchy. So
stinks.
Here we are.
Ew.
This is the last one. And so this is the one that I was thinking of earlier that another ex-Mormon shared with me. There's a bank account analogy. So we're taught that each time you have sex, it's like a withdrawal from your account. And if you sleep with too many people, there will eventually be nothing left. I'm just like, what? Like,
come on.
Now we're assigning monetary value to sex, but sex work is bound.
Yeah.
It's not, but that's
let's look at
their
their bank statements, y'all.
But
get mad.
We're assigning a value to it, and like, you know, what is the value? Like $100, and every time you give a blowy, it's $5.
Bro, $100?
And you have sex, it's $20. Like,
come on.
Do you not do these people not hear these things when they talk about like what does that even mean?
What does that mean?
Like, what is it? Tell me the value. And Mormons would say it's priceless. Like, you can't assign a value to it. It's,
okay, that's a cop-out.
That's a total cop-out.
If it's priceless, then how are you taking money out of it every time? If it's priceless, how does the value ever go to zero? It never can approach zero.
And this is not... It would be one thing if the church was doing this in the past and, like... You know, there's just those of us from our generation and older who are dealing with the repercussions of this. But it's not. This is still ongoing. This is happening in Sunday school right now.
Yeah.
Like, the church's teachings on these things are still happening.
Yeah. It's like a generational thing. One person felt good about it, and now they're the teacher, and they go, oh, well, this was a good thing that my Sunday school taught me. My Sunday school teacher taught me. I'm going to tell it to these girls. Like... Seriously, some of these people are so oblivious to the real world because they've been good all their lives. Whoop-de-doo for you. Honestly, it doesn't matter that you've had a good go your whole life, and then you're just gonna like turn around and not even consider the repercussions of your actions or the teachings that you're putting out there into these kids' minds.
Or the fact that things are different. Like, maybe when I have women in their 50s coming to me telling me about the chewed gum analogy, then maybe we should change it up a little bit. Maybe we should not be teaching girls in 2021 the same thing.
Apparently, it's not been working.
It's not working. Like, we already know. Go do the research.
Everybody's fallen into the river.
I mean...
Why is that?
The research on abstinence-only sex education in a public school, like in public school levels, and separate that from religion. The research about abstinence-only programs, they're awful. Their abortion rates are higher, their teen pregnancy rates are higher, their STI and STD rates are higher. When you implement like comprehensive sex education, go look at Colorado's sex program and what they've done. They also did a program where they gave, like, I can't remember how old they were, teenagers, like I think 13 to 17. They gave them IUDs and they reduced the abortion rate, the STI and the STD rate, and the teen pregnancy rate dramatically.
And don't make Jordan dig up the receipts on that one. She wrote
I will come for you.
Comprehensive project about that.
I did a whole research thing on this. Yeah. So don't even start with me on that because I will rip you to shreds. But the research is there. Like, we know, just being like, you know what, kids, don't have sex, because like the Mean Girls approach, don't have sex, you'll die.
You'll get pregnant and die.
Like, that approach doesn't work anymore, and the research shows that.
It never did.
Know that. Did.
Yeah.
And so maybe we should change our methods. Maybe we should.
Yeah, maybe we should just do away with stupid ass purity culture that means nothing. Yeah. Biologically means nothing. And does spiritually nothing but harm. Means nothing.
I mean, this is a form of spiritual violence. It's weaponizing purity culture and religious teachings into making women feel less about themselves, into women feeling like they need to harm themselves because they're not worthy or they're less than. Like, this is not okay. And I'm not going to shut up about it until somebody does something about it. So here we are.
So if you're in a position where you can do something about this, please do.
Talk to your kids.
Talk
to your kids. Are you if you're a nuanced Mormon, let's say, watching this, do you know what your kids are being taught in their Sunday school classes in Young Women's? Do you know what they're teaching? Do you know what they've been told? Because especially if they're teenagers, they probably ain't going to tell you.
Yeah.
So
it's the same old. Yeah. That's what I always said when I was a kid.
Go to their leaders. Yeah. Ask questions. Go to your bishop and say, what are the leaders teaching? Do you know? Yeah.
Well, this can apply to anybody in any fundamentalist religion. If you so stumbled upon our videos and this applies to you at all, like your church teaches this kind of stuff, double check with your kids to make sure this is not the cesspool drainage that's being just funneled into their brains.
And I mean, with your sons too, I mean, obviously the same thing applies. I feel like it's just more on a intentional level with when they teach young women. But ask them, are they getting taught shit like this? Do you want your daughter to internalize shit like this? Like, do you want your daughter to be thinking like that? Like, we've already got enough for these kids to overcome in this generation and this place and time as it is right now. You don't want to stack anything up. And so be aware.
Especially
ask
needless stuff like this.
And then take it into your own hands. You're responsible for your kids' sex education.
Yeah.
In part, at least, if not as a whole. And so teach research-based practice, teach evidence-based practice, take a class. There's plenty of courses out there. Research.
Yeah.
Don't spew toxic shit that isn't true anymore.
And let's be clear, and this might ruffle some feathers. If you are shunned or cast out or excommunicated for questioning these types of teachings, it's very telling about what is really going on at the institution you decide to attend church at. It's completely false.
Could be your kid. And then your whole world's upside down. So I know it's kind of, a lot of us live in a world where it's hard to imagine those things until they happen to us. But when something like child sex abuse happens to a child, you can't take that back. It's too late.
Yep.
And so don't put your kids in a position as much as you possibly can, because we have a child. We understand you can't protect them from everything, but you are going to do everything in your damnedest as a parent to protect them from things like this. And things like this are harmful. You need to protect your kids from things like this. And protect yourself. If you're young and still being exposed to this crap, no, it's not true.
Yeah. It's garbage.
If you're stuck,
garbage.
It's total garbage, right?
Yeah. So
I'll hop off my soapbox. I know this is a little different from the videos that we usually do, but
this is a little heavy, honestly.
It's important.
We do love, joking around. I love goofing around, but you got to have the hard conversations too, especially when they're doing incredible damage like these ones are. So thank you for bearing with us. Do you have anything?
You're still here.
if you're still here, yeah, thank you for bearing with us.
We have more lighthearted content coming this week.
Yes. We'll be doing our question and answer. There's some good questions in there.
We're answering your questions.
We're going to have some funny... I'll be able to do a lot of funny responses to those while being also informational. So that's awesome.
So get your questions in before...
Get your questions in. So what we wanted to talk about for the giveaway... I'm holding that over all your heads. So if you made it this far, awesome. We were thinking about giving away
some candles.
Some candles from Exmo Candle Company. I think what we'll do, if this is what everybody, if there's enough interest in this, then hell yeah, we'll go with this.
We'll give you if there's enough interest in the Exmo Candle Company, we'll buy the full set of candles and ship it to you.
Well, holy shit. Okay, we're committing.
If this is what if that's interesting to you and you're like, hell yeah, Exmo candles,
and
we'll do it.
Aside from them being nuanced, if you're not Exmo, who gives a shit? We just want to support
it's a funny story.
People in our community. Yeah. And it's a bomb ass candle.
It smells good
so even
hell,
if you don't give a shit about Ex-Mormon stuff,
Plus, it's a great storyteller when you have this out at your dinner table and somebody's licked cupcake.
Licked cupcake. What's that?
And you're like,
oh,
let me tell you.
Yeah, a YouTube channel I subscribe to. I won their giveaway.
Or
look
let's
at this.
talk about
awesome.
Purity culture.
Let's talk about some purity culture.
Yeah.
So, comment, respond, and if this is something that would interest you, leave a comment. If it's not, be like,
also,
nah, do something else. This is just the first thing that came to mind, and so we could do some more research and find something else.
There's something that would be good. But we would love to support our fellow Exmo.
Yes, please let us know. We'll try to figure it out for the Friday video, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, all 5,000 of you amazing subscribers.
We're honored. Truly.
We're truly honored.
We appreciate each and every one of you.
Yeah. If you follow Jordan and McKay on Instagram, you've already seen those things if you check out the stories.
Yeah, if you want to go read them again, or if you want to share them, and they're all saved on our highlight. Yeah,
they're all in there. I think for that reason, I will not put screenshots of them in here, just to keep it easy to edit. So go check those out. We do post pretty regularly still on TikTok if you want to follow us there. Both accounts are at Jordan and McKay. Links as always in the description. If you're looking for a way that you could support us, we have our Ko-Fi in the description. We might put our Venmo in there, but if it's all the same to everybody, it doesn't really matter. Our branding is our across the spectrum. It's all the same. If you're looking for us on a particular thing, just check out at Jordan and McKay.
Coming.
We're gonna we're gonna finally get some stuff in the works.
We have a million things going on.
If you like death metal t-shirts, like I do, I love band t-shirts. This one should be interesting for you.
Got some stuff coming for you.
It's being designed, so please show some interest in this. But thank you for bearing with us, and we will see you next time.
Bye.